Okay, one of me is lit and one of me is not. And I mean that literally, not figuratively lit. Thank you. Welcome to the September Cross Timbers September chapter meeting. And we're glad to have a full house here in the room, and we're glad to have several dozen of you Zoomers. Before I ask who's a visitor and who's a trainee, you know how many of us, I think as adults, we've all been through this. We're just not going to get sick. We're just not going to get sick. We're just not going to get sick. Unfortunately, our immune system and our bodies don't respond. I am very happy to tell you that Amy Martin is out of the hospital as of yesterday. If you would like to friend her on Facebook, I know she'd be thrilled to have you. She's Amy Martin, and the picture, you know, she's the blonde lady and she's wearing a blue shirt, and she might be the only Amy Martin from Dallas. I don't know. And we will reschedule her as soon as we can. She just not, you know, able to bounce back. You young people, appreciate how fast you bounce back, okay? Because it don't happen anymore. So therefore, we're so grateful to have Kim Sasan. I could never pronounce my students' names. That wasn't good either. Sasan, thank you. Who I happen to know that she's giving 3 presentations at the annual meeting in 2 weeks. And I said to Mary Beth, surely she's got one of them finished, you know. So you all are her guinea pigs for what she'll be. You're going to get to help her gain her. I know she's got her confidence, but you're going to, you know, anyway, she'll do this presentation at the annual meeting, so you'll get a taste of that. We have some other folks whose family members or who themselves have been ill, and because not everybody's Amy Martin and posts everything on Facebook. If you're missing somebody who's usually here, come ask me and I'll talk individually. But just keep in mind, our health matters a lot, and our family members' health. So if you don't mind, before you get started, I'm going to go ahead and try to give announcements before I forget. The first announcement, because it's the first one on my stack here, from Donna and Chris Honkamp, who before COVID, you remember the before times, were working at Weatherford College, and they have a mammoth lab, as in the big, you know, ancient elephant. And the professor is starting that up again. And they're going to work on Saturdays at Weatherford College. And okay, so this is for you Zoomers. Is it Seigler or Siegler? Okay. And put in the subject line, Mammoth Lab. All right. Or ask Donna and Chris if you're here, or send me an email afterwards and I'll forward Donna's email to you. So that's going to be on Saturdays. And because archaeology and paleontology is natural history, we can count that for hours. We don't have this as a separate. Oh, thank you. She's going to type it into the chat. They heard you. So there's a line under volunteer service called not otherwise listed, and that's always useful. So that's number 1. And it must be Weatherford, it must be Parker County's week. I will send an email tomorrow Chandor Nature Trail, Chandor Gardens in Weatherford, behind all the fancy, beautiful flowers and fountains and sculptured garden. Well, behind that, they're working on a nature trail, but this is my kind of volunteering. The week of September 25th through 29th, S&S Trail Services of Austin, Texas will be coming to Chandor Gardens in Weatherford to remove overgrowth and dead wood. S&S is experienced with working on community trails and encourages volunteers to help them. This will if volunteers will help save Chandor Gardens a lot of money. We need signups for morning or afternoon volunteers. Duties will be trail assistance, support, and errands as needed. See, that's why this is my kind of volunteering. It does not involve, chainsaws and axes. We also need lunches and dinners during the week for the work crew. And again, Chandor Gardens, Chandor Nature Trail is one of our projects. So I made a few copies of the information, and I'll be putting them back on the table over there. This is from Christy Tull. She's also part of NPSOT, the Native Plant Society of Texas. So please help her out if you're either interested in working in that part of our chapter, or if you're from Parker County, or if you're not from there, but you live close to there, please consider helping out. I happen to know that Glenwood Park on the east side of Fort Worth will have a trash cleanup day on October 21st. October, that's one of the 2 busiest months for master naturalists, right? So I'll be posting an announcement about that too. I imagine it'll coincide with TCU. That's what they have done in past years. So it won't just be us folks, it'll be a lot of TCU kids. Debbie asked me to announce there's still one lights out sign for someone to pick up. There's fossils over there, thanks to Fonda Fox and Marshall Fox. We'll look at all those galls over there. You didn't call it golly though, like you did for the annual meeting. They always say have a catchy title, Gotta be unique. And if you ordered from the pop-up store, I got an email today. If you ordered shirts, hats, whatever, they should be coming soon. So again, that's not me. I'm just passing on that information. So Mary Beth, can't say ciao, can't say arrivederci. Buenos Aires, is that? She went to Italy.
It's funny because my daughter and son and their spouses, we all took a trip of a lifetime. And my daughter is 5 months pregnant. So every time prego means you're welcome or it's okay, no big deal. So she felt like they were calling her names. Anyway, okay. Kimberlie Sasan is a hero of the night. The month. Fill in and so graciously filled in to give us an excellent presentation. And she has a lot of gall. Oh, sorry. Anyway, so we're so glad to have her here tonight. I'm really nosy and she has a great story. So I had to write all this down because it's real complicated. I thought she had her PhD. So I'm like, what's your education, Kimberlie? Well, she has this great story, and she was a business analyst for 20 years working for an insurance company. And how many people in here know what a business analyst is? Okay, y'all are a bunch of scientific people, I can tell. But she organized and led IT projects and was the go-between. I worked in IT, and I won't say anything about IT people's personality because I'm one of them, but she did the nicey stuff for people. She retired to take care of some family matters. And then about 10 years ago, she took her son to walk through a park And guess who she met? Sam Kieschnick. And those of you that are new, how many class members do we have here tonight? Brand new class members. Just one, two, three. Don't be shy. Okay. Okay. You. Right. Okay. So she went on this walk with Sam, and guess who else was there? If Sam's there, guess who else is going to be there? Brent. And she had this curiosity and love of nature. And Sam said, you should be a master naturalist. So she became a master naturalist in 2017. This is a great story. Then Sam introduced her to a Brit employee, Tiana, and she started volunteering to do the transcriptions for the specimens. So Brit has a bunch of plant specimens that have handwritten stuff on it. And so you take that handwritten stuff and type it in. And that's something you can do to volunteer at home. And she created a video to train people how to do that. And she and Tiana created the armchair botanist, like a good business analyst. She recorded the video and created the project and got all these people that, you know, signed up, and thousands of people are doing this. I'm exaggerating a little bit. Yeah. Okay. All right. So anyway, she's worked at Brit for a little over a year. She fooled me. I thought she had her PhD in science. So, but she's a remarkable person. And let me get this stuff off the screen. How do I do that? Anybody want to tell me how to do this? This little line. That one. Thank you. Can't believe I worked in IT. Okay, here we go. Let's welcome Kimberlie. Just a second. Oh, yes. You guys, thanks for coming.
Thank you both for the warm welcome. Am I in the right spot? If I feel like I'm going to talk this way,
I'll ask the chat people.
can I turn this way a little bit? No. Okay, there we go. Made some faces. Okay, close enough. Whew. Now I feel like you know my life story. I want to hear all about you. No, seriously. I have been a master naturalist since 2017. I was immediately interested in bugs. It didn't take me long to figure out that that's what I liked. And I went to an entomology class at Texas A&M for a week, and I loved it. And it's part of my volunteer class training. So it's like an extension of the Master Naturalist program. And I highly recommend it. I'll tell you more about that later if you're interested. But it was super exciting. And it brought me sort of full circle of, I really knew what I wanted to do with my Master Naturalist training once I went to this class. So everything I do now is with bugs in mind, but I work with plants. I work at Brit, which is here, part of the Fort Worth Botanic Gardens. And I am an herbarium and research assistant. So I work in the herbarium with Tiana Raymond, working with people who are digitizing our plant collections. But I'm also working on the Ferns of Columbia project. So I'm helping a research assistant with the ferns from Columbia. I'm not bored. I love to have my hand in every pot possible. And if you know me, you know this is true. I started with volunteering at Brit. Then I went to Bluebird nest box monitoring, which I still do today. I like to moth. I am big in mothing and try to get out and do that as much as I can. I'm naturalist. I'm a huge naturalist person. I will talk to you about iNaturalist. I have tens of thousands of observations. I'm not on it as much as I would like to since I started working again. But you know, one day I say when I retire again, I will again. What else? There are tons of things. So the galls just fortuitously came about. And I'm going to tell you that story as we get into it a little bit more, but it's an interesting thing to see a gall on a tree and not have a clue what it is, and then just keep walking by. And that's what most of us do. We just keep walking by, and that's okay. But tonight I'm going to open your eyes to something new. If you walked by those plants and you just kept walking, you're totally normal. That's what everybody does. Every one of those leaves or those plants that I picked has a gall on it somewhere. So as you walk back by them tonight, when you head out, take a minute to pick up that plant and look at it and see the galls on it. Look for the galls because they're all different. They all appear in different shapes and colors and sizes. And some of them are different insects. Some are wasps, some are midges, some are moths. They're all in different forms, but you will see them now in a way that you have not seen them before after tonight. And I'm excited about that. So let's get started. If this is going to work. Ah, there we go. So first of all, what is a gall? I'm going to hopefully not trip over this. So a gall is basically when an insect lays an egg on a plant and that plant creates like a tumor around the egg. And that egg grows inside this plant tissue, and the plant tissue grows around it. And that creates a little nursery for the egg as it grows into a larvae and eventually pupates into an adult wasp or midge or whatever insect it's meant to become. So you can see a couple of examples here, but let's talk a little bit more about them in detail. Common host plants. You probably have seen them on oaks if you're familiar with them, but they come on a variety of plants. I like to point out oaks. I also like to point out hackberries. If you walk up to any hackberry tree, chances are you could probably point out 10 different species of galls right there on one tree. They're that ubiquitous. They're also found on roses, on grapes, on anything in the Asteraceae family, which is sunflowers. It's a big family, so the bugs like them. Hickories, I mentioned. There's some others, but those are the big ones. And where can you find these galls? If there's a plant part, there is an insect that makes a gall on that part. What we have just recently learned in the last couple of years is that some of these insects actually make a gall on the leaf at one part of the year and then make a gall on the root another part of the year. And it's the same species making a gall at different times of the year, making a totally different looking gall in a totally different location, but same species. So we're learning more every day. So galls are something that is still advancing in knowledge today. It's not an old thing. It's kind of a very small section of science where there's not too many people that are studying it. And that's why it's interesting to me, because it was something that I could sort of get into and dig around and find myself in a whole bunch of different rabbit holes. So these are some of the insects that induce galls. And I'm going to use that word because you may hear me use it again later on to specify inducer is something that creates the gall. They're responsible for causing that tissue to develop in the plant. And I want to be clear that the gall is plant tissue. It is not insect tissue. So if I were to take DNA, it's 100% plant tissue. And we'll talk more about each of these in a second. Some of the other words, galls are somewhat like hotels. The interesting thing is that they have the inducer, but they also have what we call inquilines, which are insects that live inside the galls, but do no harm generally to the insect that created the gall in the first place. They may live inside harmoniously. They may live inside and eat the plant tissue, maybe to the detriment of the other larvae, but not intentionally trying to cause damage to it. There may be parasitoids, and by parasitoids, I mean that it is it's an insect that is laying an egg on the inside the gall, and that is eating the larvae that's inside it. And then there's hyperparasitoids, which would be a parasitoid of the larvae. And you can do that, I think, 5 times, 5 different levels. Yeah. So in the picture here, you can see Sauropterus, which is the inquiline, and the really cool yellow and black one, Psychophila porcellanae, is one of the parasitoids that came out of the galls. I mention this because it took me about 2 minutes to realize that rearing galls, raising these wasps to see what comes out of them, or these galls to see what comes out, is not simply raising them to see the wasps that created them. It's raising them to see all of these insects that come out, because they are highly parasitized. And so it is a variety of things. It is definitely like a hotel. You might think that you're going in to see John Smith, but you're actually getting a whole host of other people that are coming out the door. So back to the gall inducers. So let's talk about these guys. And by the way, all of these are my pictures, so I'm going to brag a little bit. This is the gall wasp. This is a Etrusca unica, which means nothing to you, but I like saying the names. The way that I can tell that this is a gall wasp is the veins in the wings are really dark. That's about it. Other than that, they all look the same. This is about 2 millimeters long. So think about 2 millimeters. It's smaller than a grain of rice. Smaller. It's teeny tiny. It can't sting you. You probably won't notice it. You have a better chance of swallowing it than you do of finding it. I mean, realistically. When I lose them, and I do lose them when I'm rearing them, I just hope that they come back. And frequently they do, because I can't control them. They have a mind of their own. So let me show you some of the galls that are made by these wasps, so that you start to see them with your eyes. The fuzzy one here, there's a couple of those over on the table. This is called the furry oak leaf gall wasp. We got real creative with the name. This one on the right is my favorite. I use it quite a lot in pictures. I took this at a park in Arlington, and it was one of the first pictures I took of a gall, and I just love it. Andricus lustrans, I actually figured out that it was named incorrectly. And one of the things that is quite challenging if you get into science with the names of things is taxonomy is very difficult to kind of try to tease into the right naming patterns. And sometimes people get things wrong. And you can imagine if I have a wasp and I give it a name, and then I realize later on, oh, here's a gall, I'll give it a name. And then maybe those two don't match up, that now I have a gall and a wasp that didn't match up, but they came from they're the same species. So now I have another wasp that came out of this gall, but which one does he belong to? It gets very confusing, especially when you have parasitoids and all of that are involved in it. So I was spent some time going down a rabbit hole and figured out that Andricus lustrans was the correct name, and was finally able to get it correctly synonymized, which is a long story, but one that I'm very proud of. So this is one of my favorites. Cocosinus Riley, I think is just the weirdest looking gall I've ever seen. It's one that is on red oaks. And as you'll notice, I've put down here the host. I can be more specific, but generally I like to say that it's on a red oak or a white oak or a live oak or a sunflower or a rose or a hackberry. These galls are very specific to which tree they like to lay eggs on. So they will not flip around. And so because of that, I can say, I know what this insect is based on the shape of this gall. I don't ever have to see the wasp. I know that this will always be Cocosinus riley. And of course, finding it on a red oak, I could tell you which red oak that was just by looking at the gall. Oh, okay, I know that's a blackjack because I only see them on blackjack oaks here. Also take a look at the one on the right and how this looks like leaves. They're pretty smart. Would you have guessed that that's a gall? Not at all. Especially in the fall when these are most prominent. You would have walked right past that with no clue. Yep, exactly. Right down in the bottom. A couple more. This one on the left just reminds me of dryer balls. You know what I'm talking about? I just wanted to show you that one's different. This one, you might have recently seen these. These are about the size of a quarter in general, and they fall underneath red oak trees. They are actually coming right off of the cap of an acorn. Can you see that? So they come off the cap of the acorn and they grow to this quarter size, and then they drop off, fall to the ground, and then over time they get buried in the ground or whatever, and they stay there for a year or more, and then the wasp will come out. So this is one that will get buried in the ground in the dirt. But it's called an acorn plum gall, and you can see why. It's pretty. But it surprises me to find one that is so large coming off of an acorn cap. In comparison, Zophoteris picatum here is probably about 1 millimeter. It's a teeny tiny one. And it's very pretty speckled. And I had about 4 of them picked out today, and every one of them fell off the leaf. So they're very delicately attached. A little frustrating when you're trying to show them off, but that's okay. On the right, look at all of these. This is a live oak tree. This is Belenocna kinsei. So I'll mention this one again in a minute. But I want you to notice the number of galls on this one. A couple of people have seen this one here on the left, the oak flake gall. So if you're looking for a name, there you go, oak flake gall. And this is a good time to remind you that when you are photographing galls, you want to photograph the top and the bottom of the gall, because you might have seen the indentations on one side and not flipped it over and seen the fuzzy galls on the other side. So sometimes what's on the other side gets totally overlooked. So make a habit of looking at both sides. Andricus texanus, this was my, what I call my gateway gall. It was the one that got me started. I found this out at Sherry Capehart and was so curious about it. It was the wrong season entirely. I found it, I think, in late January, early February, and was curious about it. Took it home, stuck it in a bag, hung it on a tree outside, and forgot about it. And I had wasps within a couple of weeks. And that's when I said, wait, what is this? And everything went to hell after that. Andricus biconicus. These are really interesting. They're on the end of an oak tree. And so if you can imagine, they look like the growth buds of the oak tree. So they don't look like anything unusual. So you have to kind of know what you're looking for. Yes, Charlie, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah.
But each individual one is a.
Yeah, each one has a wasp in it. So that would be multiple eggs laid there. This would be multiple eggs laid where this has just one wasp in it. Not always the case though. So sometimes you can have multiple wasps laid into one egg or into one gall. So it depends on the species. Each one is a little bit different. This is one of my favorite ones to find. You can see them coming up now. They're just starting to show up. It's still just a tad early, but they're really pretty, but they're real small. So you have to kind of look hard for them. They're on the underside of the leaves of bur oaks, the really large leaf oak trees, and they're real pretty. They're usually bright red, something kind of flashy, and they have these little pokey spots to them. I just think that they're neat looking. I don't know where they got the name jewel oak though. Jewel oak galls. So I'm going to attempt this. As Sharon mentioned, I'm giving a similar presentation at the annual meeting in October. I have a co-presenter there with me who I'll tell you a little bit more about in a minute. So the presentation is not the same, but it's a little similar. And I threw this together for today, trying to see if this would work. So if your eyes glaze over, that's totally normal. So in the springtime, we're going to start here. A wasp will lay an egg, and that egg will turn into a gall on a leaf. And the larvae will grow through the summertime, and they will turn into pupae inside the galls as the galls lignify, or they get kind of woody and hard. And this is just one example. This is that Belanocna kinsii that I mentioned earlier that had all of those galls on the leaf that I said, remember? So the pupa are inside. The wasps emerge in November and December, and they immediately go down and lay eggs in the soil on these little potato-looking rootlets. So here they are, they've laid eggs in the tissue of the leaves at first, but now down here, they're laying eggs in the roots. And really quickly, they go through larvae, pupae, back to wasps, and then start all over again. So you see they have kind of a long cycle and a short cycle. But what I want you to notice is that these eggs here, the long ones, produce asexual females that emerge. Asexual meaning they don't have to have sex. They're duplicates of each other. So they're all females that emerge at that time. And then, am I saying this backwards? I have to think now because it sounds right, because it doesn't sound right to me. And then they lay the eggs on the roots, and these are males and females that come out, and they mate and start the process over again with producing just females. Not sure I've got that right, but yes, very shortly after. So, oh, the question was, do they die off after they lay the eggs? So yes, they do die off very shortly after. Like a lot of insects, their goal is to mate, lay eggs, and then they're done.
That was an opinion.
Do they-
from Joanne.
That was, yeah. Moving on. So let's talk about gall midges. There are also some gall midges on oaks. The one on the left here is, there is a sample of that on the table. But I love this one on the right. It's from a hickory tree, the little sombrero, especially because we're celebrating here, Celebramos, right? At the Fort Worth Botanic Garden. That was appropriate. It's also coming up on Halloween time, so I threw in a couple of fuzzy pumpkins and a couple of barrel galls. These are both from hackberry trees. So you notice now that I've kind of switched from oak trees to now hackberry trees. Hackberries have a tendency to attract more midges than anything else. So that's just a quirk of nature, I guess, just the way that nature played out. This one over here, I'll go backwards. This is, look at the shape of this. The chemicals that must be involved to tell the plant to make this shape are just fascinating. Somebody somewhere should be studying this one. Yeah, with the speckles, yeah. Yes, it's plant tissue. Yes.
Different galls, different shapes, depending on who laid the egg.
Yes. So the question is, can the statement, I guess, the plant can make different galls. The same plant can make different galls based on the different species of wasps. So yes, it's not uncommon for me, especially like hackberries, to walk up to a hackberry tree and see 10 different species on one tree, to an oak tree to find 5 different species of wasps on one oak tree. And they are all recognizable based on the shape of the gall. And that's part of the reason that it was so easy for me to get interested in it, because I didn't need to learn a dichotomous key. I didn't need to learn a technical language. I didn't have to learn about wing venation or any of these strange things that kind of go over my head even. Take a look at this. That is a gall. This is a fold. The leaf has folded over, and that is it. And that is considered a gall. That is a midge, a fly, basically.
I don't have a question. I don't know if it's a question. So if it's all the plant material, if I test the DNA of that dog, the plant material will be the plant.
Yes, the gall itself will be the plant.
Somewhere in there is the DNA of the bug that lays
The larvae, if you test the larvae,
you test the larvae.
right, but that's it. So the gall itself will be plant
There
DNA.
has to be some kind of, in my mind, a chemical
Yes.
thing that
Yes.
makes, to me, they have to be connected some way. We're going to do that for this one and that for the other one.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the question is, how does the plant know what shape to take for each gall? And the question is not entirely answered. We're still trying to figure that out. There is surely some chemical reaction, and to know exactly what kind of chemical, we aren't there yet.
Well, and the wasp or the midge, whatever the chemical is coming out from that larva is activating different genes in the plant.
Yes.
So that sometimes the plant folds the leaf and sometimes it makes those little cupcakes
Yes.
and pumpkins and stuff.
And it could be a combination of things. It could be chemicals from the adult when it lays the egg, and then chemicals from the the larvae when it starts to grow, and it could be any number of things. It could be a combination of things. So yeah, there's a lot of unknowns there still. And there are people that are trying to find out. Gall aphids, psyllids, and phylloxera. This is another fun one. And these are tiny little creatures, hard to get a picture of. I typically take pictures of the galls, so I was lucky to have a picture of the insect at all. But these are fun. Look at these little stars. Can you see the little, they look like little stars on the top? So the hackberry star gall. This one I've shown you the top of the leaf and the bottom of the leaf in the picture so that you can see the important reason for taking a picture of both sides. So if you had shown me this, I would know what's on the other side, but somebody else might not. You would not. So it's important that you take pictures of both sides because they're entirely different. Sometimes they make little bulges like this. And if you cut into them, you can find the little aphids inside. Moths also make galls. These are fun to find, hard to rear. They're a little bit more mysterious. They're great if anybody wants to try to solve the mysteries. You can see this one here. The trouble is, okay, you find the gall, you cut into it to see what's inside. Is it a wasp or a fly or a moth? You find out what it is, and then you basically ruin the nursery. So you have no way to rear it out at that point because you've ruined its food source. So it's a little bit tricky there that you have to be able to collect a lot. And unfortunately, they don't lay a lot in one area. So that's a little bit trickier sometimes, but these are a little bit more known. Gall mites, these are microscopic. You will not see these on the tree. You will not see the insects at all. This is I want to say 100x. And that picture is this gall right here. So teeny tiny, I had cut into it. This is another one of the gateway galls, as I like to call it. This was BioBlitz. And I took this picture, also in Arlington, coincidentally. Arlington's been very favorable to me. And I thought it looked like those fruity Captain Crunch cereal things. You know what I'm talking about? Maybe I was just hungry at the time. I don't know. But it really just had my attention. They stood out, and I took pictures, and nobody knew what they were. And it sat on my iNaturalist for years. And nobody knew what they were. And then once I started getting into galls, I was like, I'm going to find out what they are. And I found somebody who I thought might know. And I did a little bit of research, and I messaged him. And I said, here's what I think it is. What do you think? And he said, well, probably not. And I said, yeah, did you read all my research? I'm fairly sure. I think I know what I found. And he said, no, probably not. So I said, all right, fine. No, it wasn't Sam, thankfully. Yeah, Sam would have been very positive. Sam was like, I love this discussion. Yeah, he was rooting us on. Absolutely. And that's what we've come down to, is that this is an undescribed one. The problem is that for this group, this type of insect, this areophyid mite, there's no one studying these mites that has an interest in looking at undescribed mites because there's no money in it. So there's no grant that's willing to pay them to take the time to describe it. Right. So I'm just out of luck, unfortunately.
You should get to name it yourself.
So it sits there. That would be great if I get credit for it, but chances are by the time it comes back around, I'll be long gone. I just have no hope that there's ever going to be money for it. Areophile mites are such a very narrow field that what they're looking at is ecology and problems that they cause and things like that. So they're not interested in describing a new one. They're interested in what do the mites do. But you can see here, these actually cause these big round fruity things. And these just cause this kind of a blistering effect. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. So on the left, we have the fruity ones that are actually round balls. And then on the right, we have the blistery looking ones, but both made by mites. So just two entirely different types of galls. Again, you might not see the one on the left too often. It's a ragweed mite. Even though we have a lot of ragweed, it's just not that common. But the one on the right, the poison ivy leaf mite, is very common. Even though we have plenty of poison ivy, we certainly have the leaf mites quite a bit too. So I encourage you to keep your eyes open, just keep your hands behind your back. So why look for galls? As I mentioned, it's easy for anyone to observe them. You just take a walk in your backyard. I picked up the samples that I have on the table. I don't know how many there are, 30, 40 maybe. I picked those up in a 45-minute walk from the Britt building to this building. And there are 16 different species on that table. So in 45 minutes, I came up with 16 different species, and that was just in a short walk. Those are the ones that I know. Those are the ones that I know that the trees are. I know the trees are there. I know which ones are on those trees. I don't go out and look at those every day, but I know what to expect. There's a lot that I now overlook because I think I know what's there to expect. So I'm starting to get blind from it. And that's where you come in. You will start to see things that I do not see. And that's where we will help each other. So I'm looking forward to that. Do you have a question? The question is, do they damage the plant? They can damage the plant, but it's very rare. So most of the time, the answer is no. I have 2 brand new live oak saplings that were just planted in my yard. They are covered in galls. Those trees will grow just fine with the galls all over them. So I'm not worried about that. Do they help the tree? No. They don't provide, it's a symbiotic relationship, yes, but they don't provide any help back to the tree, as far as we know. As I mentioned, they're easy to identify because if you can recognize the gall as different from another gall, then you can identify it. And I'll show you how to identify those by the morphology, by the shape of it, by the color of it, by the texture of it. You don't have to be able to identify the insect, which is usually how it's done in entomology. Even with the adult wasps, they are so similar that we still don't rely heavily on that until we get to describing a new wasp. That trying to key out a wasp is just a nightmare, so we don't bother with it. We go by the gall when we have that, and if we don't have it, then we stick it in a drawer and wait for later. So as I mentioned, no dichotomous keys, no specialized terminology. If you've ever tried to key out a plant, you know that you have to have a glossary to figure out what all the terminology is. You don't have to do that. The gall is round, the gall is fuzzy, the gall is woolly. It's on the bark. It's on the leaf. Okay, maybe if you don't know what a petiole is, you know, it's fairly simple. And the galls are visible for many months. So they're not going anywhere. That's the nice thing, is that these are insects that are basically stuck there. And there are many unknown species to be discovered. So as you mentioned, there are quite a few that I know of that have not been described by science yet, and that we have found and are waiting for science to describe them. But there's a whole lot more that are out there. And there are days when I go for a walk and I can come home with 2 new species that have never been seen before. And I'm like, well, there's 2 more, stick in the pile. Because I don't have time to go through them anymore. Somebody else needs to. And there's a process for that. And because I'm now working, I've run out of time. And so I need to get the troops together. I need to rally the troops. And so that's where you come in. Yes.
So when you go into the lead, you separate the way
the question is, when I separate the leaf from the tree, does it impact the viability of the gall? No. But if I can just ask you to hold that, I will talk to you a little bit about collecting. And if I don't answer the question, ask me again. Okay. Also, many natural histories are unknown. So there's a lot that even if we know about the species, we may only know that that particular species has been seen on blackjack oak, but that's all we know. And that was back in 1940. We might not know that it's been seen on Shumard oak or bucklei or whatever. There's many other things that have not been seen before. So that's something that's happening frequently, is we're finding more host associations. We're extending the ranges for a lot of these species. We're finding them in states where they weren't before known to be. As we're rearing them out, we're finding parasitoids that are associated with them that we didn't know anything about. And then, as I mentioned, we're now just realizing that these wasps have 2 generations. And something that they have recently come to realize is when you have an asexual female, a sexual female, and a male, they all 3 look different, but they're the same species. So how do you key those out? You do genetic testing. So I want to share this exciting story with you. This is Druon lacei. I had the pleasure of being called. I'm going to skip to the next page, just see that this is a paper, and the wasp, which I do. Yeah. My name is in there big. So I'm going to tell you this story. Bob O'Kennon is a researcher at BRIT here at the Fort Worth Botanic Gardens. He's pretty well known. If you are out at parks, there's a good chance you'll run into him somewhere. He's usually walking around. He's got a white Jeep. It's got a big sign on it that says BRIT. Something. I mean, he's second only to Sam, but don't tell him I said that. Bob is he's an amazing man. He has an amazing life story, and he is much more than a botanist. He is a self-taught botanist, so he's not academically trained, but he is very involved in botany now. And he likes to do other things. He likes to be learning about something new all the time. And his current thing is galls. He started learning about galls because of iNaturalist, because of us identifying some of them. And that sort of triggered his interest. And so he called me one day and he said, there's a plant at the Fort Worth Botanic Garden that has galls on it, and I want you to see it. And so I said, okay, thinking, it's one of 100 other galls, probably just something that I hadn't seen before. And he showed me a picture, and I had kind of an idea. This is what the plant was, what it looked like. And it looked similar to something. And so I said, it's probably this, maybe not. I'm not real sure. Let's go look. So we went out and looked at it. This was at Thanksgiving. And I said, Bob, I don't think this is anything that we've seen before. I think this is something new. And I think, how many times have you ever wanted to say, I think this is something new, and it actually turned out to be something new. And so I was proven right. The only way that was proven was by me rearing that out. So Bob found the gall. He gets the credit for that part of it. And I came along and said, I think it's something new. And I reared it out to get the wasps out. And so you can see how cute they are by the picture there. And so, so this is a picture of him looking surprised. We tried to recreate it. Forgive me. But one of the exciting things about this is the plant. The tree is an oak tree. It's a lacy oak, which is not from around here. It is typically more San Antonio area, further south down into Mexico. And it just so happens that the Botanic Gardens have around 40 to 50 lacy oaks planted on the campus. And some of them are huge, and they all have galls. And we have no idea where the galls came from. We have no idea if these galls exist anywhere else in the world. There's so many questions, but we started with let's just identify this first one. And so we were able to name it. We went back and forth between his name and my name, and we duked it out and came up with naming it after the tree instead. No, we didn't. We named it after the tree just to be politically correct, not to be egotistical. So yeah, we did get to name one. So this tree is right out here in the parking lot. And there is a sample of it up there on the table because the galls are coming out now. So let's talk about, if you're interested in this, how to photograph galls for identification, because that's the next step. So let's say that you are out and about, you see galls on a tree. What do you need to do? First thing is take a picture of the galls on the host plant, like I've done with this top picture. I've kind of gotten, I'm going to call it a landscape picture. I've pulled out enough that I could see the galls are still on the tree. If I didn't know what tree it was, I would take a picture of the tree, the leaves, the acorns, if there are any, or fruit, whatever, because a lot of times the gall folks who help identify these can now tell you what the tree is based on the gall. So we've gotten to be that good because the insects are that good. So next is take a top and bottom picture of the leaf. You can see in the bottom left corner, this is just the top picture of it. I didn't show you the bottom here, but I did show you a cross section. This is really important because it shows you where the creature is in the gall. And specifically on the hackberry galls, we found that this was very interesting because the wasp, or the midge in this case, is in many different locations in the different galls. And so if you go onto iNaturalist and you look up the hackberry galls, a lot of my pictures are these 3-section pictures on iNaturalist, and you can see the different galls where they're at in the cross section. that who would have thought that they're just taking up the upper half? Why not take up the whole thing? Maybe they didn't need it. Maybe he's still working on eating the whole thing. Who knows? But for whatever reason, that's the position that they're in, and that's significant. So we can identify this gall and separate it from similar shaped galls, because there are some that are similar shaped that have maybe a wider base, but the inside is totally different. So note the host plant if you do know what it is. If you don't know what it is, at least note whether it's an oak tree or a hackberry tree. If you know that it's an oak tree, try to identify whether it's a red oak or a white oak. Red oaks have pointed lobes on the leaves. White oaks are rounded, and then live oaks are spear-shaped looking leaves. They're smaller, and I have plenty of examples up there to show you. And then next is visit gallformers.org. This is a site that I'm incredibly proud to be associated with. Several, back during COVID, when I had plenty of time to jump down more rabbit holes, I went online and started writing journal posts about woolly galls in Texas and how to identify them. And I wrote this post, and this guy from way up north commented on it, and he started identifying galls from his area, and we started talking back and forth, and he was saying, yeah, I think we can put something together, like, put a guide together where you can identify the galls. And he started with the oaks, and it grew and it grew. And next thing you know, we've got gallformers.org online, and it is amazing. He went to a conference not long ago of wasp and gall academics. So all the smart brain people in the world that are studying galls, and all of the papers referenced gallformers.org. All of the presentations had people that were associated with gallformers. Some of the volunteers, this is completely volunteer oriented. So it was wonderful to see that we're making a difference in science. And this is very difficult to get beyond the academic hurdle, because academics think of us as, community science. It's they don't know what they're doing. Let them go play. And now they're starting to see the value of, they're willing to raise these wasps and these midges and try to see what's going on in there, and take cross sections and go collect things for us. And now I have my own lab, and that has been such an amazing experience for me and for them. So that's been the fun part about it. So definitely Gallformers, if you haven't already bookmarked that, you're going to want to know that one. And then, of course, the third picture here you might recognize from the last screen. So I went to Gallformers and I put in sugar hackberry, which was the tree that I had in this previous picture here that I was trying to identify. And it gave me pictures of galls or gall-like things. And the third one came up with the one that I wanted. And if I clicked on it, it would have told me the name. It was that simple. So my presentation gets a little rough at this point, and you'll have to forgive me because I was trying to throw it together at the last minute. I know. I'm still working on this part because I want to put something together. I want to put something on the Gallformers website that will help people to collect and photograph and rear out without me having to guide you through it in person. But so let's say that you're out collecting, or you're interested in collecting, you're interested in possibly finding a new species, or just curious about what the heck is going on here. Take a Ziploc bag with you. That's what I did today. I took a Ziploc bag and I labeled it with today's date, the location that I'm at, and the host tree. So I have a different bag for every tree that I pick from. Not every tree, but every type of tree. So every Shumard oak. So I'll put all of the Shumard oak galls into one bag and all of the Burr oak galls into one bag from the Fort Worth Botanic Gardens. So I'll have 3 or 4 bags by the time I'm done. And then if I go to a different park, I'll start over. I'll put the name on that park and start over with a new bag for Shumard oak and for Burr oak. When I'm taking the galls that have leaf attachments, the individual leaves are fine. They will survive at that rate. It depends on how early you are picking them. So this is one of the things that we're still trying to work out. We have a tool on the Gall Formers website that will help you to determine at what point this gall matures so that you can get it at the right stage. Part of this is learning about the galls themselves and when they look mature. So you can see some of those that I showed you in the pictures are mature. That's what they'll look like. A lot of times you just get lucky. I would say most of the time, I still have something come out. I will collect this week and I will collect again in 2 weeks and again in another 2 weeks. So I'll collect duplicates because I don't know, but that's me. You may not want to do that and that's okay. Just don't be surprised if you get parasitoids that come out next week instead. That's still a win because we might not have known that that parasitoid was associated with that gall or that that gall was associated with that tree. So it's still valuable information, whatever it is. I do. So I'll tell you about that in a second. So, so I'm collecting all of these into a Ziploc bag. The leaf attachment, so you can pull off the individual leaf, but leave the gall attached wherever it is. If it's attached at the stem, I remove the whole stem. So take a look at how I have pulled these off. Most of them I've pulled off the stem. I like to pull off a piece of the stem instead of just the one leaf. Sometimes the leaf is easy because it comes off a lot easier, but if I can pull off a stem, I might get more. Uh-oh. And I'm talking, I've lost track of time. I'm a chatter. Yeah. So I don't know if you guys can see this or not, but I've picked, this is a good 8 inches long piece of stem and the gall is here on a leaf and there's several leaves here. And my purpose was if I have several of them, then it'll take a little while for that leaf to dry out so that if it does dry out, it takes a little bit of time and the gall still has the opportunity to grow potentially if it's going to. No. And the reason for that is that they will mold very quickly. So I'll talk in just a second here. Let's go on to the next page. So I want to show you what I do once I get home. That's with the Ziploc bags. So that's just collecting in the field. Once I get home, then I take each of those Ziploc bags and I sort them. So I'll do one at a time. I'll pull out the Burr oak, for example, and look at all of the galls that I collected for Burr oak and put them in groups that look the same. So let's say, I'll say live oak instead. So I've got this fuzzy gall here. If I have a bunch of fuzzy galls, I'm going to put them all together because they all look the same. And then I'll put them all in one bag and I'll label them. I might not know what they're called. If you're on iNaturalist, then you can take pictures and upload that. It will help you to come up with a name. You can look up it on, you can look it up on Gall Formers. There's several different ways to find out what you think it might be. Back when we didn't know, we called them live oak fuzzy galls. I mean, we made up names because we didn't have a choice. And then we would put the iNaturalist number with it. So whatever number whatever my upload was, I used that observation number and wrote that on the tag. Can you see oh my gosh, I've got too many things here. Can you see in the picture, the tag right there, the white tag? It has on it, it says unknown. I can't, Havardii, I think, which would be the host tree, the date, and the iNaturalist number. Yeah, and Big Spring, which was the town where I collected it. So I came home, I separated those out, tried to put like galls together from those trees, and then took additional pictures. I would take measurements. I would write down anything that stood out to me as interesting, and then put them in mesh bags, the kind that you get for wedding gifts or surprises or whatever. All of this stuff is available on Amazon. If it's not on Amazon, then I didn't use it. I created my own lab, quote unquote, and it was all on Amazon stuff. So these are garden tags, the plant tags, you know, and I used a UV resistant ink pen. It's like a marker that you use on plants, garden pen, so that when I put these outside now, so that they are getting the same environmental weather that they would have normally gotten, then I'm not losing the identification on it. And I've had them just wash away. So that was a little tricky. I was like, okay, now what are these? So I store these mesh bags in a big laundry hamper, one of those mesh laundry hampers that zips all the way around. On the top, it took me a little while to find one that zipped closed because sometimes the wind would tumble it or whatever. You can put it in your garage. You can put it outside. I staked mine outside and left it out there so that it would get rain and wind. I tried to keep it in indirect sun so that it would still get some sun, but it wasn't like bright. And I would check them weekly for emergence. Can you see the wasps in these? Yeah. So it's pretty easy to see that, hey, something's come out. They go straight to the top. So you want to make sure that the bag is closed tight. And at this point, you can't tell whether it's the inducer or a parasitoid or an inquiline. All you can tell is that something has come out and there's a lot of them. And so you want to take pictures of that and photograph those as best you can. Yes. Each one of those came out. The question was, did each of those bugs come out of one of those galls? So each gall had one insect in it. These are the acorn plum galls. So these are the ones that were on the side of the acorn cup. And if I remember correctly, these are actually parasitoid wasps that came out, not the inducer. I don't think I actually had the inducers come out of these. They were a little tricky. So I'm going to prepare you. It's very difficult to do the next step, which is to collect the wasps and put them into alcohol so that they are preserved. It requires a lot of academic knowledge. No, I'm just, my 9-year-old did it. She's 9. If she can do it, you can do it. It takes a toothbrush or a paintbrush and a glass vial and a bottle of Everclear, if you know what that is. Photograph those wasps so that you can put them on iNaturalist so that we know what they are. Sometimes that's going to be blurry. Let me tell you, half of my pictures are blurry. They're hard to photograph. If you need to drop a little bit of alcohol on it to kill it and then take a picture, that's okay too. We've done that. Drop them in a vial of Everclear, or you can buy 95% ethyl alcohol on Amazon, believe it or not. Yeah, it is. Yeah. And then reach out to Golf Warmers for a contact, or you can do this before, you know, at any point. Golf Warmers is working on a list of projects that researchers are interested in having help with, and we'll be releasing that soon. So right now, we're just looking for you to go do whatever interests you, if you're interested in it at all. So just get out there and have fun with it. Otherwise, we will have some ideas of things that you guys can help with once you get down to it. You can see, like I said, she's 9 and she's got it. Yes. The question is, what are the things under her hand? Those are the galls. They are, this was a cluster of galls that had broken apart. And I don't know if you can see the bag right here. The galls are in the bag, and over time they dried and kind of broke apart a little bit. And so when we dumped out some of the wasps, these wasps are not flying very much. They're really lazy. They will walk around all day long, but they don't really fly. So we would just dump them out on paper, and she would catch them with the paintbrush and dump them in the vial. So sometimes we would have so many of the gall material in there that it would just come out with the wasps. So I think that day, the irony is that I didn't know what I was getting into, and I collected hundreds of galls. And let me tell you, I woke up one morning and went, oh my word, all these wasps came out on the same day. And I'm like, I wasn't prepared for this. I have things to do today. Yeah. So they all told each other, today's the day. Anyway, that's it. Sorry to kind of cut it off right there, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Okay, I have some online questions.
Okay, go for it.
Why do butterfly eggs not cause galls?
Why do butterfly eggs not cause galls? Yeah, I don't have an answer for that one. Butterfly eggs resemble galls, or can resemble galls. There's maybe a mimicry part there, but they are lacking in the chemicals. They are not actually implanting the egg into the tissue of the plant. They're laying the egg on top of the plant, and that would be the difference. So like other wasps, they're laying that egg inside they're using an ovipositor to dig into the tissue.
Okay. Do any of these cause pain if you touch them like an asp?
Oh, that's a good question. Not a single one. There's no stinging. The downsides of gall hunting, as I like to call it, is not the galls themselves or the wasps. As a matter of fact, you can have, I have pictures of galls crawling or the wasps crawling all over me. They're so tiny that even if they did sting you, you would never feel it. I have no idea if they're doing it or not. Because they're so tiny, you can't feel it. They tickle when they walk on you. That's about what I can say. The challenge is when you are looking for galls, you are often looking through the trees that have the asps climbing through them, and that have wasps, Polistes, paper wasps that are chilling on the leaves, and you don't notice that, and you move that, paper wasp aside, and it gets angry and comes back at you. So the gall wasps themselves, or the galls, midges, whatever, are of no harm. There's no stinging hairs or anything. So all of these are safe to touch. You can pull the hairs off if you want. There's no harm to you at all. It's the other insects you've got to watch out for that are out there too.
Okay, as prevalent as the cedar elm gall mites are, is it true that nobody's been able to rear them and then ID the insect?
Yes, the cedar elm gall mites are the ones here, these red fruity looking ones. They are extremely common to find. There's another one that looks just like it that is not fuzzy, that's just warty looking. And there's just no one that is in academia that has expressed an interest in taking on the project of doing the genetics and describing it. That takes time, and it takes away from their work that they get paid to do. So no one's interested in that, unfortunately.
Okay.
And if you know of anybody, we'd be happy to talk to them.
How do you cross-section a gall?
Okay, that's a great question. So let's see if I have, I'm gonna step away for a second. So I have here a gall right here. Can you all see that? It's this part between my fingers. This is the gall. This is all just leaf tissue. So the gall is in the petiole of the leaf. So what I would do is I took this leaf off and I would cut along the line of the petiole. So I would cut this direction with it. And I would hold it. This one is very woody. So first of all, I would look at the texture of it. If it's woody, I would not try to cut it with a blade or anything unless you have clippers or pruning shears or something really strong, because you'll cut your finger off. Some of the thinner ones, some of them are very delicate and are like juicy and jello inside, and you can cut them with a knife and it's perfectly fine. But these woody ones, use pruning shears and just cut it in half. I suggest that you cut it, instead of cutting 50-50, I like to cut over maybe 60-40 a little bit, because that way, if there is an insect inside, you're not cutting right through the middle of it and getting a big gushy mess. That you're cutting over just enough that you probably will miss it, but then you can still see the inside inner chamber and the inside itself.
Razor blade on the soft
On the soft ones, you can use a razor blade. You can use sometimes a pair of scissors even. I have, if I'm using a razor blade, I like to hold it with tweezers or something, because they do roll, they're round. So use a little bit of common sense and don't cut your finger.
Another question is, can you tell us about the training for the Texas Master Volunteer Entomology Specialist? And how often is that class held?
It's an annual class. I'm going to suggest, just based on the time, that you Google Master Volunteer Entomology Specialist, MVES. And it's held every year. It's part of the Texas AgriLife training program. So it's associated with Texas Master Naturalists, Texas Gardeners. It's an extension type program, and it's held in different locations around Texas every year. And it's a week-long program, and if you get the opportunity to go to the one at Texas A&M, I highly recommend that.
And also, there's a lot of interest, a lot of compliments.
Great.
Is there a group gall outing coming up?
Yes. There is, I have one walk that is planned that I can invite you to. It's a bit far. Spring Creek Nature Preserve in Garland. And now I have to look at the time or the day. It is October It's a bit far off. October 29th at 2 p.m. Spring Creek Nature Preserve. So it's a bit far off, but I will. Mhm. Okay, wonderful. Any questions here? Yes. If you use isopropyl, then they are not good for genetic testing. And so that's one of the things right now is we have to be able to do genetic testing on either the larvae or the adults. And so that's why the 95% is so important. So what's that? Yes, yeah. So you're preparing them to be sent to a researcher, to a lab. Yep. So Everclear is the easiest just because it's convenient, but you can buy the 95% on Amazon. Thank you, Kim. And do stop and take a look at the galls on your way out. A lot of these that I have are some that were in the presentation. And so I want you to try to find them on the leaf now because you've seen them, but to see them in person and see how tiny some of these are is really a challenge. Thank you very much.
I will read out, I'll read out tickets. Josephine, if you'll get me the tickets. Thank you, Kim. I have one more announcement. If you are interested in Tarrant Regional Water District Stream Trailer Training on Wednesday, the 27th of September, come and see me. I'll forward the information to you. Thank you, Teresa, for sending that over. Thank you. All right, meeting's adjourned, but I'm gonna read out